Hello everybody and welcome to Teacher Not Preacher, episode number 8. I do apologize in the amount of time it has taken me to make a new episode, but I've been working hard and researching hard to make sure that what I say is factual. So anyhow, I'm here now, and I really appreciate your encouragement. Rock, thank you very much for your encouragement. It really has helped me. Today I want to talk about, well, let me just back up. Before we started on Revelation chapter 1, I did a preface to that to kind of get you accustomed to what that chapter was going to be about. And I'm going to do the same thing with Revelation chapter 2. I'm going to give you a preface. And the thing that comes to mind most is the word apostasy. Now, according to the Oxford Dictionary, apostasy is abandonment or rebellion against or renunciation against religious beliefs that were once held. And that crept in to Christianity, and it has been going on for a very long time. John wrote the book of Revelation. When he wrote it, Christianity was 60 years old. Jesus had gone, and Christianity here on earth had been going on for 60 years. And at the outset, it survived 40 years of constant opposition from Judaism. The Jews still believed in the law and rejected Jesus as the Messiah, and they continued. And so they were constantly opposing the Christians. Well, in the year 70, these unrepentant Jews who just rejected Jesus, they lost their national identity when the Roman Empire surrounded Jerusalem. And Jerusalem was inside of 4 walls all around the city. If you wanted to get in, you had to go in through the gates to get to the city. Well, the Romans and the Jews were constantly battling back and forth with one another until finally, in the year 70, the Romans sieged Jerusalem and completely ravaged it, destroyed it, killed many innocent people, many people, and destroyed the temple. The Jewish temple, which they had at this point made into an idol. They revered this temple more than they did worshiping God. They really loved this temple, and the Romans destroyed it. So that kind of is what happened during this time frame. Now, apostasy within the church. Paul had written about it long before John started writing Revelation. And Paul was saying that apostasy had already set into the church. Again, apostasy is an abandonment of spiritual beliefs, or completely rebelling against it, teaching something else instead. So let's take a look in the Bible at 2 Thessalonians. That's 2 Thessalonians. Excuse me, these pages get stuck together. I will find it. Just bear with me here. Here we are, the Thessalonians. We want to go to the 2 Thessalonians. And chapter 2, in verses 3 through 12. It says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Okay, so what we're seeing here is that already the churches were being warned about people creeping into the church and deceiving people and pulling them away from the truth. And it says that day shall not come, that's the Lord's day, without their coming or falling away from the truth first. Okay? And that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Now, you can say that this is talking about a literal one man of sin being revealed, or one man being the son of perdition, but it's actually a collection of people that fall into this category, because there's so many that are men of sin and men of perdition. Even Judas was called son of perdition. So it's a collection. It's not one individual. So we're going to verse 4. Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, shewing himself that he is God. Again, this is a collection of people that do this. Now, what comes to mind for most people, comes first to mind for myself, is the Pope. He fits this perfectly. He exalteth himself above all. He demands people kiss his ring, bow down to him. He sits on a golden throne. He's marched around town in a bulletproof encasing, and he has made himself the highest of the highs as far as Christianity goes. So he fits into this category. There are others that have done this throughout the years. You know, Christianity has been around for 2,000 years now, and so the Pope is in the position of the Pope, and the particular Pope is not the only ones that have done this. It's also been done by other leaders, religious leaders. So it's not just one person. It says in verse 5, Remember ye not that when I was yet with you I told you these things? And now ye know that withholdeth that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him, whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned, who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Okay, so again, we're talking about those that are trying to deceive the sheep-like ones, the actual righteous ones. We could think of preachers. I know growing up I used to see a lot of preachers on TV that would bring up a man in a wheelchair on stage, and he'd touch him, and all of a sudden he'd be walking around that stage. Well, if that was true, if that was real, that preacher would be at children's hospitals curing them of cancer. Okay? They're lies. It's deceiving. And we're being warned about that, to not just take a preacher's word for it. Okay? Seek out the truth for yourself. Everything that I tell you, I want you, if you have any questions, to research it. You have the internet. You have the entire wealth of information in the world at your fingertips to fact check what I tell you. Okay? So it's just talking about how we'll be deceived. And at the end here, verse 11, it says, God shall just go ahead and send them over to strong delusion to let them believe it. They'll believe it because God is like, you know what, if you don't care any more about the truth than that, then I'm going to give you strong delusion and go ahead and believe it, and I will separate you from those that want the truth, my people. Okay? All right, let's see what else is said here at 2 Peter chapter 2. At 2 Peter chapter 2. Okay. Verses 1 through 3. Okay, we're talking about false prophets and teachers here. It says, "But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. And through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not." So again, we're hearing here in Peter about deceivers again. Okay, just to reinforce it. And also again, if we take a look at 2 John, a very short book, verses 7 through 11. There is no chapters in it, so it's verses 7 through 11. It says, "For many deceivers are entered into the world who confess not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and an antichrist." Notice it says an antichrist, not the antichrist, an antichrist. So, and it says many deceivers are going to be called an antichrist. So when we think of that word antichrist, we need to think of a collection of deceivers, not just one individual man. And we go on to verse 8. "Look to yourselves that we lose not those things which we have wrought, but that we receive a full reward. Whosoever transgresseth and abideth not in the doctrine of Christ hath not God. He that abideth in the doctrine of Christ, he hath both the Father and the Son. If there come any unto you, and bring not this doctrine, receive him not into your house, neither bid him Godspeed. For he that biddeth him Godspeed is partaker of his evil deeds." That's very harsh. That's a very, very serious thing. And when you read in the Bible, these are not suggestions, these are commandments. So it says, if anybody comes to you and brings not the doctrine of Jesus Christ, receive him not into your house, nor bid him Godspeed. You've heard that word, Godspeed. I wish you Godspeed. It says don't even do that. So it's showing that we really need to separate ourselves from these deceivers. Okay, they are out there. They are wolves in sheep's clothing, and all powered by Satan and the evil demons. So this apostasy is the reason that Jesus wanted to write to the churches in the book of Revelation to warn them to stand firm in righteousness and truth. Some of the forms of apostasy, I'm not going to go into all of them. I just don't have the time. I don't want to push it. But just some examples. The church has stopped using God's name. In this Bible, God's name is Jehovah or Yahweh in Hebrew, and it appears in the earliest manuscripts of every single one of these books almost 7,000 times. Yet you will not find it in most versions of the Bible. Maybe 1 or 2 times, but not 7,000. They replaced his name with Lord in capital letters. So every time you read the Bible and you see the Lord in capital letters, that is supposed to say Jehovah. Okay? So that's not just an accident. That's not just a mistake. That was done on purpose. Now you can, talk about the reasons why. It doesn't matter. That was wrong. That was a mistake to do that because God, Jehovah, is the author of this Bible, and he wanted his name to be known so much that he put it in there 7,000 times. Why do we need to know his name? We need to know our Creator. We need to have a personal relationship. If you want to have a personal relationship with someone, don't you want to know their name? So it's important to know who your Creator is. His name is Jehovah, and it's okay to call on him in prayer by his name. And that's just one thing that sticks out with me. Now, also in the 4th century, not until the 4th century, the Trinity doctrine began. Okay, so for 400 years, Trinity was not taught. The first 4 centuries of Christianity, there was no doctrine saying that Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit are the exact same thing. That did not occur until the 4th century. Also, the idea of an immortal soul. That didn't come about until the 4th century. Jesus talked about a resurrection. If we have immortal souls, that means they can't die. So how can you resurrect something that hasn't died? That was never taught, that we had a soul inside of us. Jesus talks about resurrecting from the dead. When you die, but you have a resurrection hope. Okay? Now, the Roman Emperor Constantine really turned this up a notch by giving state approval to the religion of Christianity. And this combination of state or secular beliefs combined with Christianity is what we call Christendom. And that's where the church and state joined forces, and they did so and ruled for 1,000 years. And Christendom is different from Christianity. Christianity is holding fast to the truth and not bringing in secular beliefs, not bringing in pagan beliefs, not bringing in rituals or Greek philosophers' ideas. Christendom has all of that, okay? So we can go ahead and classify Christendom as false religion, okay? Now, back in this time, it was very easy to become a Christian. Very easy. Whole tribes adjusted their earlier pagan beliefs to versions of this religion. They wanted to become a Christian, no big deal. They say, hey, I'm a Christian, and they bring in their own pagan beliefs in with it and call themselves Christians. And many leaders in Christendom became oppressive political tyrants that enforced their false apostate views by the sword. That's not Christian-like. Jesus warned the Ephesians, when we're talking about the letters in Revelation, we'll start that with chapter 2 in upcoming episodes. But one of the letters was to the Ephesians, and Jesus warned that they needed to regain the love that they first had. Well, love for what? Love for truth, love for one another, love for God, love for Jesus. They had abandoned this love, and they were just calling themselves Christians, and that's about it. We see that today. We see it a lot. But let's look at where he said that to them at Revelation chapter 2 and verse 4. This is Jesus talking to the Ephesians, the congregation in Ephesus. He says, "Nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love." Okay, so he was warning them, get it together, guys. Get back your love, get back your spark, get back your fire for Christianity. And these Christendom members, they fought vicious wars and persecuted one another, like I told you, by the sword. And that is not Christianity. Let's see what John, at 1 John, what we're supposed to be doing. 1 John chapter 4 and verse 20. It says, "If a man say, I love God, and hateth his brother, he is a liar. For he that loveth not his brother, whom he hath seen, how can he love God, whom he hath not seen?" Okay, so we're showing here that we're supposed to love one another. If we're persecuting one another and forcing our beliefs on others by the sword, then how could you love God if you can't love your brother? You can't. All right, and another letter that Jesus wrote was to the congregation of Pergamum, and he warned against sectarianism, or what we call today denominations. He hated that. He wanted just one truth, and that's it. But this occurred in the 2nd century. There were no denominations for Christianity until the 2nd century. And let's see what he says about that. Revelation 2, verse 15. It says, "So hast thou also them that hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate." Okay, the Nicolaitans was a denomination, and they had pagan beliefs. And he says, you hold the doctrine of this denomination, the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate. That's a strong word coming from Jesus. So he did not like sectarianism, denominations. We want the truth and nothing else added or subtracted from it. Okay, he also wrote to Sardis. Now, what was the problem with Sardis? They forgot all about doing Christian works altogether. We know the Bible says faith without works is dead. You have to, when the Bible says believe on Jesus Christ, the actual translation should be exercise faith in Jesus Christ, meaning live your life in a way that shows that you love Christ and that you believe in his teachings. Well, they abandoned that in the congregation of Sardis, and they abandoned the preaching work. We've been commanded by Jesus. One of the last things he said before he left was go forth and preach this to the entire inhabited earth. Well, they decided to stop doing the preaching work, and this is when they started delegating the work of preaching to a small paid clergy class to just take over and do all the work. And they just believe in Jesus and believe that he existed, and that was that. And Jesus calls them spiritually dead because of that. And if we look at Revelation chapter 3, verse 1, he's talking to the congregation of Sardis. "And unto the angel of the church in Sardis write, These things saith he that hath the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name, that thou livest, and art dead." He's talking about spiritually dead. All right? Okay, also, he wrote to the congregation of Thyatira. Well, what was their problem? What was their apostasy? They started engaging in idolatry and fornication. Idolatry, the first thing that comes to my mind is if you have a statue of Mary and you bow down before her and pray to her, that's idolatry. Any way you cut it, you can't get around that. That's what that is. And they were also engaging in fornication. And God and Jesus both made it very clear that sex is supposed to be between a husband and a wife, period. Anything outside of that is fornication. Well, they were engaging in it. So what did Jesus have to say to them? At Revelation chapter 2, verse 20, it says, "Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication and to eat things sacrificed unto idols." And that's what they did back in those days, is they would sacrifice animals to idols and then eat them. Just completely. That is Antichrist. That's Antichrist behavior. Okay, so that's Thyatira. Now, the clergy of Christendom have been the most prominent members of Satan's seed. Remember me talking about Satan's seed and that man is part of Satan's seed. Well, let's look at 2 Thessalonians. I've already read this, but I'm going to read it again to hammer it home. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. "Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved." All right. Now, during the Middle Ages, apostate rule peaked with the Catholic Inquisition. You can search more on that. I don't have time to go into that, but just know that the Catholic religion was the main religion, and if you questioned it, if you tried to get a copy of the Bible for yourself, you were tortured, persecuted, and or burned on a stake by the Catholics. Okay? If you even questioned them. So some homework for you would be to look up on YouTube a man by the name of John Huss. Last name is H-U-S, as in Sam. And look and research him on what he did. And also a Bible translator by the name of William Tyndale. These are two guys that saw the corruption and the apostasy in the church and faced it head on. And it's amazing stories what these men went through: imprisonment, torture, persecution, and finally martyred. They were killed. So check out, do some research on John Huss and William Tyndale. You can still find translations of William Tyndale's Bible today, where he tried his best to correctly translate it, because the Catholics had the hold of the Bible. You had to go to them if you wanted to hear from the Bible, and you had to listen to how they interpreted it, which means they added and subtracted. Okay, so finally, people started waking up around 1517. They started what was called the Reformation. And that is where the people woke up and said, look, this is not Christianity. This is a lot of pagan beliefs and rituals and things that we were not told to do, and things that we were told to do we're not doing. We need to change. So they stood up and they made the Reformation in 1517 onward. And guess what? History repeats itself. They did a good job by reforming, but again, History repeats itself, and apostasy crept in, even then. Let's look at Revelation chapter 16. In verse 6, Revelation 16:6. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. Okay? So he's talking about shedding the blood of saints and prophets. Let's wrap this up with the book of Matthew, chapter 23. I apologize for the length of this particular episode, but it's a lot of information I'm trying to cram into as short as time as possible. And you can research, I encourage you to research more on this on your own. Matthew chapter 23, verses 33 through 36. It says, Ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. So that's Jesus' warning about being deceiving and attacking your brothers, persecuting them, killing them. It's all wrong. It's all Antichrist. Okay? Now that's about the half-hour mark, and I do not want to go any further than that. The next episode, I'm going to talk about how, even though all of this occurred with the apostasy, the seed, God's seed, still remains, and it still was able to endure through all this apostasy and is still here today. And I will give you the good news of that in the next episode. But thank you so much for tuning into this one, and I hope you learned something. Research. If something I said doesn't make sense to you, research it. Question everything that I say. I do not claim to have all the answers. I do not claim to be infallible. I'm just trying my best to be what I'd like to see happen in the world, the change that I want to see. I want to get out truth and information to people. And I thank you again so very much, and look forward to doing the next episode. And everyone have a wonderful day. God bless.